Hey, what's going on, everyone? DelVecchio here, and about 2 weeks ago, I just was going through my client websites. Some of them got bloated over the years, and I just wanted to speed them up. And in doing so, I came up with a really good process. Some of those websites were loading between 3 and 6 seconds, and I got them down to about 1 second, and a few of them actually loaded within 900 milliseconds on some of these tests. And that's all with pretty cheap hosting. So I want to share that with you today. And before we do that, I just want to go over a couple quick things here. We'll discuss the benefits of having a fast website, why it's pretty much a necessity. I'll go through a couple good rules of thumb for building WordPress websites to make sure that you don't get in the same situation where it's over bloated. I'll touch on the impact of web hosting when it comes to speed. And then we'll get to the screencast part of this video where I'll go into the step-by-step process that you can use to speed up your site. Once I finish this video, I'm going to put together a one-page PDF going through all those steps. So if you want to download that cheat sheet, go to websiteprofitcourse.com/speed, and I'll also include that link in the description below. So let's move on to the first slide here on why speed matters. And the biggest reason is that it helps with SEO. SEO is search engine optimization, and that means that Google likes fast websites, and they're more likely to send traffic to your website if it's fast. And that's because they really focus on the user experience. And you want to do that as well, because if you have a slow loading website, you're going to have more people that bounce off the website before it loads completely. And what that really leads to is reduced conversions and reduced profit if you're running a business website. So you have to focus on this if the online component of your business is a big driver to your success. And most of all is that the world is going mobile. People accessing the web. It used to be very heavily skewed towards desktops about 5 to 10 years ago, and now it's completely in the opposite direction with mobile phones. And if they're not on a Wi-Fi connection, that load time is really going to be increased. So you want to do everything you can to stack the deck in your favor. Now, the 4 rules of thumb that I have here, number 1, I think the biggest thing that you have control over that is not really that technical is optimizing your images. And I'll go into more detail on that when I jump into WordPress. The second thing is limit plugins. I like to keep every WordPress site that I have with under 10 plugins installed, and many of them have only 3 or 4. I think it's a pretty beginner mindset to kind of add all these different features to your website and add plugin after plugin to do that. When in reality, I think what you want to do is take away everything until you're at the bare minimum of what you need, and then only add something if it's completely essential at that point. Along those lines, you want to limit any embeds, and a good example of this is YouTube videos. I've had a couple pages on my client websites where we've embedded like 4 or 5 YouTube videos on one page, and you can noticeably tell the difference when you load that page compared to the home page or another page. And with web hosting, this is largely a business where you get what you pay for. If you really want to increase your speed performance, you're going to need to go on higher level hosting. That's going to improve your server response time. A lot of the higher level hosts give you access to a CDN, and I'm actually going to show you how to do that for free using Amazon. They have a service as part of their web service package where you can integrate with their CDN for free on WordPress. I'm going to show you exactly how to do that, but that's really an optional step. This video is geared towards beginners. You don't have to be on the best hosting package to improve your speed. You definitely want to give it a go to see if you can get the fastest speed possible on a shared hosting package. And like I said, I've been able to do it time and time again. I think the big limiting factor is just the amount of traffic the website gets. If it's a local website, you're going to be fine. If it's a global website where you have high traffic, at some point you're going to have to upgrade web hosting. So with that in mind, let's get right into the screencast demo. Now here's the website that we're going to optimize today, and I have a full tutorial on how to build this website. So if you'd like to check that out, I'll link it here in the top right. And this is made with one of the most popular WordPress themes called Divi. I actually found out about them through you guys when I did a survey on my subscribers, and they were one of the most popular WordPress themes for beginners because they have a drag and drop system that makes it super easy to create a professional layout like this without knowing all the code. Now, if there is one downside to that I've heard, it's the performance. So there are other themes that are more geared towards performance, but they probably take a lot more time to learn and perfect. Divi is the opposite, where it applies to a lot of people, but you might have to do a couple tweaks to get it working or loading a little bit faster. So that's what we're going to do today. And I usually use one of two services to test speed. One of them is just by Google. They have a service here called Page Speed Insights, and they've changed this up a little bit over the years. So let me load this URL into here, and I'm going to run this test on our website, and I want to get the before-after score so we can see how much we improved it. So we got our report here, and you can see it's not that great. They break it down into mobile and desktop scores, and it's 1 out of 100 or 0 out of 100. So we scored 15 out of 100 on mobile and 61 out of 100 on desktop. And they give you some details here. They're a little bit technical, but they tell you what you did good at, what you did bad at, and what you could potentially improve. And I'm going to install plugins on WordPress that are going to help out with this process. So you don't need to really understand everything that's going on here to try this out. But what I'm going to do is just log these scores. So I have a notepad text document open here, and I'm just going to write down these scores, and I'm going to jump over to this other service called Pingdom. So this website is tools.pingdom.com, and they're also going to give you a report, and you can run this from a couple locations. I'm in the US here, so I'm going to run it from San Francisco. And let's see what we get. And we just finished up here. Our performance grade here is 75, and they give you the page size, which is 2.5 megabytes, and our load time was 10.5 seconds. So that's not that good, and I don't know if that's maybe the particular way I built it or something going on behind the scenes. I'm not a complete expert with Divi yet. I've only built 2 websites with it so far. And if you scroll down here, they also give you recommendations, and the other cool thing I like is they give you the all the file requests that happen when you load this URL. And right now they're just showing you 10 per page, but it's showing 25 requests. So if I bump this up to 30, it's going to show us all the URLs, all the individual files that are being loaded with our website. So now that we have our scores here, actually let me log this really quick on Pingdom. I'm going to log both the 75 and 10.5 seconds. And then we'll get to optimizing the site, and we'll see how well we do when we improve it. I'm here on the WordPress admin page, and before I pop into the plugins, I want to go into the media section and just show you the images here. Now when you upload media, it's going to go to the media library. I have a handful of free stock photos uploaded here. And if you click on it, you'll see that over on the right hand side they show you the dimensions. So this picture is 1300 pixels by 866 pixels. One thing I always do before I upload a photo to WordPress, I'll always resize it to about this size or even smaller, depending on the widest display of that image on my website. That might be 700 pixels wide, it might be 1000. But I would say I almost never upload images that are larger than this, than 1300 pixels wide. And what you'll find is every photo that you take with a camera phone, it's probably going to be about 4,000 or 5,000 pixels in width. So that's really large, and that's going to eat up a lot of your hosting space. And then if you insert those large photos into your website, instead of showing the right size, that's really just unnecessary file size that is being transferred from your web server to the browser. I do this with Photoshop. There's a way to automate this. So usually what I'll do is if I have 10 or 15 photos, I'll throw them into a folder, and you can automate the resizing to a certain pixel width on Photoshop. I'm certain that you could do this with online editors or a free photo editor as well. But that's the way that I deal with photos. I'm not going to do anything in this video with optimizing photos, but I just wanted to mention that. And when you upload a photo to WordPress, it's also going to generate a large, a medium, and a thumbnail sized image. So depending on where you're inserting these images, you can use those sizes instead of the resized photo that you uploaded. Now let me go into the plugins, and the first one we're going to install here is called W3 Cache. Now if you don't know anything about cache plugins, really what that does is it saves versions of your website so that every time somebody loads it, they don't have to go into the database and go into your web files. Sometimes the browser will cache it, so Google Chrome or Mozilla. they can cache versions of a website or files. And if you're visiting a page often, that's exactly what's going to happen. You're going to be seeing the cached version instead of, what's live on the web server. A lot of the options are very technical sounding, so I'm not going to explain every one of them step by step. I'm just going to go through the settings that I use, and depending on your hosting environment, you may have to play around with it a little bit, but I think this is going to work for most hosting environments, or shared hosting at least. So I'm just going to search for W3 Total, and hopefully this pops up. And there it is, the first one. It's got over 1 million active installations and almost a 5-star review. So it's a really good one for optimizing the performance on your website. So let's install it and activate. And once we do that, you'll see we get a new menu option over here called Performance. And they have a lot of sub options here that we can go into. We're only going to do a few of these. First, we're going to go into the general settings. The first thing that you want to do is enable the page cache. And from the drop down menu, if you have a shared server, they recommend disk enhanced. So that's what we're going to go with. I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to skip the minify section because we're going to use another plugin to do that. I want to go down to the CDN section, and this is completely optional. As I mentioned before, I'm going to use Amazon's free service called CloudFront, and you just need to set up an Amazon Web Services account, and they bill you based on usage, but it's free up to a certain level, and if you're just starting out, you're not going to reach that paid level until you get some traffic. So if you'd like to do this, go ahead. But if you don't want to worry about it, feel free to skip the CDN part of this tutorial. So I'm just going to enable it. And from the drop down, I'm going to select Amazon CloudFront. And that's it for now. In a little bit, I'm going to go into the CDN section to set that up. I'm going to continue to scroll down. And the last thing I'm going to check off here is the fragment cache and set this to disk. So let me save all these settings. And all the settings were successfully updated, but we also have this error here because we haven't set up the CDN yet. The next section I want to go into is the page cache. And on here, I scroll down. I like to check this off to make sure that pages aren't cached for people that are logged into any of these roles. And the first 5 here are default WordPress roles, and the last 2 are roles created by the plugin Yoast SEO. I'm also going to use that in a couple seconds here. So let me scroll down. I'm going to check automatically prime the page cache. I'm also going to check this preload the post cache upon publish events. And they're asking for a sitemap here. This is the one cool thing about Yoast SEO. It automatically creates a sitemap for your website. So let me open that in a new tab here. With Yoast SEO installed, you'll have this SEO menu. Let me see here. I think I either need to go to the general section or the tools section. And that's where they give you the link to the sitemap. I am in the general settings here, the general page of Yoast SEO. And here we go. If I click over to the features tab, they have an XML sitemap option, which we have clicked on. And if I select this question mark, they're going to give us a link to our sitemap. So I'm just going to right click this and copy that link and go back to here and paste it in. And you can see that the file name is sitemap_index.xml. If we go to that in a new tab, you can see what the sitemap looks like. It's really just a list of the pages and the posts on your WordPress site that are published. And you can go into that here, post sitemap, page sitemap. And the last thing I want to do on the page cache settings is, I just missed it here, this compatibility mode. I'm going to enable it. And it says that it decreases your performance by about 20%. In exchange for that, you get increased interoperability with hosting environments. Less chance this is going to cause an error. So let me save the settings here, and we'll jump over to the browser cache. That's the last section we're going to go to before we set up the CDN. So let me click on that submenu. And on here, I select the first 6 options. So make sure the first 6 ones here are checked up to the gzip compression. And the other thing that I have set here is remove query strings from static resources, and that's just a question mark in the URL, which really, that's I think that's PHP. I don't know if that's PHP exclusively, but I know with PHP that's how you can pass variables to a page to make a dynamic page. And sometimes this is added with versioning to CSS files. So I think that's the type of thing that allows your website to cache instead of loading that every single time a user loads your web page. So that's all we have for W3 Total Cache. So I'm going to save the settings. And usually when I'm done, I do the save the settings and purge the caches, but I'm going to wait until I get the CDN set up for that. And just to note, like if you make, changes to a published page or post, you're going to want to go into your cache settings and clear your cache, because otherwise people might not see that for a week or 2 weeks, or depending on how long these files are cached for. So that's just something to note after you have this set up. But lastly, we're going to go into the CDN section and set up Amazon. And then in a new tab, I'm going to go to the control panel for Amazon to make sure that we have our CDN created. We're actually going to create it through the WordPress admin, and I'm just going to refresh the page and you'll be able to see the URL that's created on the Amazon console. So right now I'm on the Amazon AWS console for CloudFront, and they have, one thing I've noticed with Amazon is they have like 20 different tech services that are available to software companies, and a lot of their sales pages are super technical. If you're a beginner, you might not understand half of the stuff, and even someone like myself who's been dealing with tech for a long time, I'm confused by a lot of the services they offer, at least how to implement them. So this is like no different. It took me a while to figure out how to integrate this. I had to find a couple tutorials and merge them together. Right now on the CloudFront distributions page, it's showing all the websites that I have set up a CDN for. So I just want to log into this page. I'm not going to do anything on here. The one thing that you want to grab is your AWS secret key and public key. That's something that you'll get when you create an account. And I usually just keep a file of this on my computer. And you use that when you're plugging in to other services. So we're going to put in our secret key and our public key within WordPress so that it can talk to our Amazon CloudFront distribution and set that up. And really what happens is that anytime you upload a file to WordPress, when you add new media, it's just going to automatically be pushed to the CDN. And then when people download the website, your web files will be served from the CDN as opposed to your web hosting, and it's going to be a lot faster. And that's the goal of what we're trying to do here. So let me go back to WordPress. And this is also pretty easy. I'm not going to really do much on the settings page besides create the CDN distribution. So this is where we paste in our access key and our secret key that we get from our Amazon AWS account. I got them pasted in. When this is done, all you have to do is click this create distribution button, and it's automatically going to do it for you. And you'll be able to verify that when you go into the AWS console. So I'm going to click create distribution, and if all goes well, we'll have a successful message here. And there it is, created successfully. And you can see it automatically imported the CloudFront URL. So this is the URL, this random string of characters .cloudfront.net. That's where all of our files are going to be served from. There is a way to create your own subdomain if you wanted to serve it from your own subdomain, like cdn.yourdomain.com. I'm not going to go through that. I don't think it's necessary. And then if I go over to my Amazon console here, you can see that we have our new distribution. And it actually has the comment, which it looks like they might have, maybe W3 Total Cache, the plugin, just updated this because it didn't do that for any of the other distributions. But we have this comment created by W3 Total Cache. So that just shows that we're integrated correctly. And then if I click this test CloudFront distribution button, we'll test everything out. And you'll see that we have the error. It's just not deployed yet. It's in progress. So it takes a couple minutes to set up here. And once that's done, we'll get a successful message. For the purposes of this demo, I'm just going to save all the settings right now and come back to you when everything is good to go. We got one last step here, and that's installing the plugin Autoptimize. That's one word. And this is what's going to minify all our files. And it also lets you lazy load the images, which that just means that images off screen won't be loaded until the user scrolls down. You'll notice that they fade in. That's a feature of a lot of WordPress themes. The more modern ones have it. This is going to give pretty much any website the ability to do that. And I have had a couple small issues with really long pages that have a lot of embedded images. But on most of the sites where I only have maybe 5 or less images on a page, it works fine. So let's install it and activate it. And this one's a lot faster to set up. Instead of creating a main menu, they have a sub-menu within settings here. So if you go to settings, Autoptimize, this is where we can go through. And this is really just clicking off a bunch of boxes. There's not much else to do with this one. So we're just going to optimize JavaScript code, optimize CSS code, optimize HTML code. We do have to include our CDN if you set that up. And it says here you can do protocol relative or add it. So I'm going to do the HTTPS since that's what we're using. So I have that pasted in, and I'm going to save changes here. And then to do the image lazy load, we just have to go over to the next tab. We go to images. This is where we can check that box. I'm just going to save. And they do have an extra menu here that can clean up things like Google Fonts. I think there might be 1 or 2 other things, but you can either remove Google Fonts, or if you have multiple Google font calls, like for instance, say you have 2 fonts, but you have 3 variations, a bold, a normal, and an italic. That might be 6 different JavaScript files or external files. I don't know if they use JavaScript or CSS to do it, but you can combine them, limit them. Really, with all the caching plugins and the minify plugins, sometimes the order of things that are loaded matters, and within these minify or caching things, that can get stripped away. In rare cases, that's going to cause an error, and you have to manually fix that. That's when things can get really frustrating. But if we're lucky, everything's going to work here. I'm not going to do anything on this page. I'm just going to leave this as is. So we are good to go here, and I'm just going to clear all the caches. I'm going to purge all caches here from the performance menu, which is W3 Total Cache. And then Autoptimize, they also have the ability to delete the cache. But it looks like it's already clear. So now that we have this done, let's load our site, and hopefully we don't have any weird errors. And the first time it loads, it's going to build that cache. And if you are going to load it again on the same browser, you're the same user, it should load a lot faster if the user is coming back to the site. And then once the cache is built and you have the CDN working properly, it's going to load for users on their first visit across the United States or wherever you're located a lot better. So if we scroll down, it looks like everything looks the same to me. I don't see any errors here. You know, I would probably go through and test things out a little bit more if this were a client website or a live personal website. If I scroll up here, you'll see that our Autoptimize now has files included. Before that was nothing, so now we have those, or that cache loaded, and the same thing with W3 Total Cache. So what I'm going to do now is go back to the testing tools, and let's see what scores we get. And just like this, sometimes you got to run this test a couple times for the caching effects to take hold. So if we're lucky, we'll get good results the first time, but otherwise I'm just going to run it a couple times and see if we get better scores. So yeah, right out of the box here, we're looking really good. I got a 71 on mobile, and on desktop we're up to 87. So let me log them, and that's up from 15 and 61. And then if I go over to Pingdom, hopefully this loads a lot quicker than 10 seconds. I'll pick the same location, San Francisco, and we'll run the test. And look at that, we got up to a 96, and we're loading in 1.4 seconds. So that's almost a 10 times improvement on what we had before. Granted, it was kind of slow before. So look at that, you know, we have a pretty simple layout here, so I didn't encounter any errors. You know, when you're optimizing, if you have a large site, you have a lot of plugins installed, there's a much better chance that you're going to hit some snags along the way. It's something that you might want to set aside 3 to 4 hours and really, you know, knock off 3 or 4 different checkpoints that might speed up your site, just like we did here with the plugins, but also do a deep dive in your images. And if you can't optimize the entire site, go into your analytics and see what are your top 2 or 3 pages and optimize them at least. You always got to go after the small wins, and eventually, if you do that progressively, you'll get to a point where your entire website is loading lightning fast, just like this. If you want a one-page PDF to review everything that we went through today, it's going to be really handy for you if you want to go through this yourself and you don't have access to the video. You can just go through the checklist. Head over to websiteprofitcourse.com/speed and you can download a copy from there. Now, if you're at the point where you're optimizing a WordPress website, chances are that you're either becoming an experienced WordPress user or maybe you build WordPress websites for other people. That's what I do, and I share 15 tools that you can use to start your own web design business if you'd like to take your WordPress skills and freelance. One of the page speed tools that we use today is on that list, and I have a bunch of others that I use for creating websites, testing the website design, and the services that I use to manage all the content that comes along with running multiple websites, both your own and client websites. So head over to my homepage, websiteprofitcourse.com, to get a copy of that. If you found this video useful, make sure that you give it a thumbs up. I know some of this tech stuff can be very complicated, and I do my best to just simplify it into the most actionable steps that get you the biggest results. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment below. And you'll definitely want to subscribe to my channel to get all future WordPress web design and freelancing videos. I really enjoyed putting this video together, and on top of that, it just feels good to know that your websites are performing better. So I want you to experience the same thing. Let me know if you do it and you get the same results. I really appreciate you taking the time to watch this video, and I hope you join me on the next tutorial.